You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me once again, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
A lot better than I was a week ago.
That's fair. You would you like to explain to the folks off the top here why last week's show didn't happen?
Yeah, last week's show didn't happen. I put it on Twitter earlier this week, so took almost 3 years down the line, but finally COVID got me. So I had to take a couple of days off naturally because
fair enough.
In fairness, I waited. That I could have done the semi-remote show, if you will, from like one room over where I don't have the full setup and things like that. But the cough was still bothering me a little bit, and I just I know what's good. I know what good listening is on a podcast. You don't need to hear me hacking up a lung.
And we're more than happy to just push it off, especially because we are so close to the trade deadline. I'm kind of glad we did.
There was a lot happening. I mean, I read about an awful lot over the course of in my time in isolation. There was a lot going on.
And if we had done our show on time, I think the biggest story probably would have been the Ryan O'Reilly trade because it had happened on the Friday night. And if we had recorded Sunday morning, it was still kind of the fresh story around the league.
Well, because we really already had the Tarasenko thing was still fresh, but then the O'Reilly one kind of came through a little later.
It just felt bigger than the Tarasenko deal. The Tarasenko deal has some interesting implications for Patrick Kane, and we'll talk about that moving forward here. But it's
been good to see it's been good to see other teams getting involved. I'll say that because for a while it was like, hey, St. Louis is doing this and nobody else, and now it's picked up big time. I mean, we've got a lot of trades.
Yeah, I do also want to talk about the fact that we've had some monstrous trades, and we have some trades breaking. We'll talk about the Timo Meier trade, but it's currently discussions are ongoing as they're actually the show.
Quite literally, they're putting out the official tweets now. So we're getting the final list as we speak. So
I was going to say we've heard for the last couple hours.
It is
now.
a done deal. Yeah, it's a done deal. Meier is a devil.
Meier is a devil, and the Metro just keeps gunning.
Right, because
it started with the Islanders and Bo Horvat a month and a half ago.
That's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, they're in a playoff spot. That team that we all went, why are they buying? Currently sitting in the first wild card spot and comfortably.
I mean, I don't know.
Relatively comfortable.
I don't know if anybody in the East should be comfortable right now. I mean,
but they're in a better spot than, for example, the Penguins or the Capitals have just completely fallen off the back.
Well, the Capitals are a very interesting story as well because. I don't know many teams that are 2 points out of a playoff. I mean, they're 3 as of today now, obviously, but at the time are 2 points out of a playoff spot and make a very seller's move, and
Dmitry Orlov out, Garnet Hathaway out, both to the Boston Bruins for futures.
Which, by the way, is a great deal for Boston because they get
phenomenal.
Because they, the team that's already running away with the President's Trophy just loaded up with a top 4 defenseman and a good depth forward.
Garnet Hathaway is just the most Bruins player in the league. If you rewind to the Capitals team that won the Cup a couple of years ago, they felt like the Bruins. They just felt like a team of Bruins. Tom Wilson feels like a Bruin. Garnet Hathaway feels like a Bruin. Ryan Reeves feels like a Bruin.
Yeah.
And now we see Hathaway just go there, and he's going to slot in perfectly. He's going to be an absolute menace in the playoffs. He's going to commit homicide in the third round because that's how the playoffs work. And the Bruins are going to win the Cup.
I mean, I'm not going that
I'm not calling that, but you know what I mean.
Oh, no, but I mean, in terms of there's not a team that team does
they're chasing the win record. Legitimately.
But but for a team that already didn't have really any holes to speak of, they somehow or other yet still plugged in to what could have been a hole, if you will. Like Dmitry Orlov's a top 4 defenseman.
Absolutely.
And he's gonna play like one.
Yep.
Especially there. They're definitely not gonna look at him and say, hey, by the way, you got to play top pair minutes. They don't need to there.
Nope. Absolutely not.
But they're gonna get minutes from him, and
I think he's gonna lock down their penalty kill.
And I think that's something that because I did see. Because we have another Bruin story we're going to get into a little later on down the show. But I watched Jim Montgomery's post game after that game, that very first game that Orlov and Hathaway played, and all he could talk about with Orlov was he already that he's thinking ahead, that the next decision is already made before he gets the puck, and he's quick with those decisions and moves it so quickly that it's already out of your zone before you have even time to worry about it. So that's how he becomes a great fit, right? Like if he just plays into the everything's moving, and we know how good that room is because Bergeron's a great captain and Pasternak's the guy who keeps it light and things like that. Like we know what a great room it already is.
And they still have a 9-point lead on the President's Trophy race, by the way.
Yeah, 9 on the President's Trophy. They got a 15-point lead on the division. Like,
and by the way, for the record, this isn't a trade for the regular season. Like,
well, sure.
Yes, these players are going to help them over the last 20 games. They're going to help them chase the win record. No, by the way, the win record's 62. They're at 45.
I know.
So they need 17 wins over their last 24 games. And at the pace this team's playing,
right?
The pace this team's playing, they would have to slow down.
Well, we already knew that. I mean, we've talked about that a little bit on the weeks leading up to, like, that they were going to be on pace for some pretty incredible things with the way
they might clinch a playoff spot like next week.
Oh, I hear. Well, yeah,
it's not crazy. We're starting to get there.
For the record, can I amend my previous statement because that's a team in the East that's very comfortable with where they are.
Yeah, and Carolina probably doesn't feel terrible either. Like the only thing fighting it out.
Right now, Carolina has one thing that they're not comfortable with per se. Like they're definitely comfortable from a playoff standpoint, though they're making it running away with a playoff spot. But I don't know if they feel. Well, sure, and listen, they've got a few days to figure that out because certainly the team that's 3 points behind them in the standings for that division, like for the Metro division, just made their move
and Timo Meier is a big add.
Sure, so now Carolina may have to counter here if they want to stay the course and be that team that ends up winning the division. I got to figure out how they would make that work, but.
I mean, it's the age of everybody just making it work. I mean, we've seen Kyle Dubas make it work.
Because we've seen it's the age of the third team comes in and eats the salary so that you can get the players you want.
Yep. And multiple times this season already, it's been the Minnesota Wild. Interestingly,
yeah, I know. But you're right. Like the playoff list for the East is just piling up, and you've got a lot of teams like the Islanders are a unique team in this sense because nobody in the Eastern Conference has played more games than that team.
Right.
Like so, there's always this possibility of you got a lot of games left for some of these other teams that are going to shuffle their way in and out and whatnot. Like I keep an eye on Detroit and I keep an eye on Buffalo that they're not out of it by any stretch because they've got all these extra games to play.
Oh yeah.
As things like
Pittsburgh is very much not comfortable where they're at. They can't.
Oh sure. Well, that's why I feel like what Washington did is such a strong statement because it's almost like recognizing
they folded in the poker game. They folded. They said
kind of yeah, but like it's because it's a recognition of we're 62 games into this thing. There's only 20 to go.
Yep.
And if we're not in this thing completely, and there's other teams
get out now,
and there's other teams, we can at least because teams like that have to start thinking. Like a team like Washington has to start thinking about the last 3 years of Ovechkin, right? Yep. Like what's left of this that we can salvage down the road? Because what if they're not a contender in the final years of that, and what happens from there? You got a guy who should be a lifetime Washington Capital.
And Elliot Friedman has come out and said that the Washington Capitals have made it pretty well known that if you have any interest in any of their UFAs, give them a call. It's sure. They're open for business.
It's a very smart thing they're doing. It really is. I mean, if you can recognize the situation and jump in head first with it, that's a big deal. And I guess to tie it into the team that we talk about the most, it says something when the team that's 2 points out of a playoff spot recognizes the situation a lot faster than the team that's 9 points out.
Well, at the time they were only 6, if you remember.
No. Not the time that the trade was being made.
No. I'm talking about the Chuck Fletcher. We're only 6 points out of a playoff spot comment.
No, that was 5 at that point.
Oh, it was 5. Okay, I'm sorry.
So it was only 5 points out, which it doesn't matter what the point total is. The point stands that we're only blank out. Well, as of this given moment right now, they're 11 points out, and the team that they would be chasing has 2 games in hand. I don't think you're making the playoffs.
So, no, absolutely not.
I mean, and then this doesn't help either, by the way.
No. Well, I did want to talk about the fact that as we come up to the trade deadline, what Flyers could potentially be moving.
Sure.
We've heard about JVR. Mm-hmm. We've heard about kind of the UFA type of guys. Nick Sealer's gotten a little love. Justin Braun has gotten a little love. Anybody whose contract is expiring, come get him. If they got one more year left, you can probably come get him. It's pretty fire sale-ish in Philadelphia. But no one's calling at the moment. There hasn't really been any trades made quite yet. Obviously, I imagine we'll see that as we creep toward the deadline.
Right.
So one of the names that has popped up as I believe the phrase was as a dark horse trade candidate, was Joel Farabee. And now, as the situation shook itself out, as a little bit more information became clear, I don't want to call it a rumor. The report is that there may be some discontent in the Farabee camp. He may not be entirely happy with the leadership of John Tortorella or the team's direction under the leadership of John Tortorella.
Right.
There were some comments by Joel Farabee's agent, and John Tortorella fired back in a press conference.
Right.
Where are we at here?
All right. So, let's make something clear about the Farabee side of this, which is that any specific comments are quiet in terms of. So, all we know is that there might be some displeasure that was voiced from his camp to the Flyers organization, but we will not ever have kind of the specifics of what's been said. But I'm sure
I'm willing to bet it's something along the lines of, "We suck. I'd like to win. Can we not suck, please?"
No, I think where it really goes is truthfully where it goes is because I know you're partially joking there.
A little bit, yeah.
Where it goes is kind of what gives with the situation because he wasn't he got benched for a game. There was, I believe I saw that Anthony Sanfilippo had put out there that if Travis Konechny had not gotten hurt in the Calgary game, Farabee was gonna sit the Edmonton game.
Well, right, and even in the Calgary game, Joel Farabee only played 3 minutes.
Right, that's what I mean. So he barely played the Calgary game.
Yep.
If
and
not,
he would have been scratched for the Oilers game.
Correct. That's the story. And that's kind of led to this conversation about kind of what gives because let's be real, and we've talked all year about this, that Farabee's kind of been given some rope in the sense that the surgery definitely has hindered him. There's no question about that.
And John Tortorella has said that he's not going to let Joel Farabee use it as an excuse.
Right.
But factually it is, he's not recovered.
Right. And it's not, I don't know if it's that he's not recovered. I think that what the real story is that he's had the time to kind of recover as the season's progressed, but the lack of his traditional offseason didn't allow him to condition himself for games 60 to 82, let's just say. Right. So he's pretty much got nothing left in his tank. I mean, in the early part of the season, he was shying away from contact, and it was he definitely wasn't as tenacious of a player as he could have been, like that we had seen in years past. Because of the surgery. But as that kind of wears off, and it's like, hey, listen, you're halfway through a season at this point, then so be it. Now it's less about, it's the injury that's in. I think it's just the fact of the matter is he didn't get a chance to build up some strength, and he has no conditioning left.
Right.
And he's kind of just going to have to go through the motions until the season's over, and you can take that, whatever, 2 weeks, a month off, and then you come back and you start lifting and working out.
And quite frankly, I really hope that after the season, Joel Farabee and the organization and pretty much everyone can look at this season and, from this player in particular, just kind of chalk it.
Right.
And we understand what was happening this year. We watched it with Claude Giroux. We watched it with, several other players throughout the league, throughout, time. We've seen Jack Eichel turn essentially back into Jack Eichel once he had a real actual offseason.
Right. I mean, he's not perfect.
Worried about it.
Right. He's not perfect by any stretch, but I get your point. There's a couple of things that come into play with this for me that I think are very important to this story. And John Tortorella's at fault for one of them, and I don't know who to really put at fault for the second one. You could kind of, interpret. I'll leave it to your own interpretation, if you will. The Tortorella part of it is that, listen, if you're going to give him any benefit of the doubt from the injury, then you kind of have you have to almost set a precedence that you can't bench him for that reason, so to speak. If you're going to try to sit here and say you're being fair and you've treated him equally like everybody else has, then you needed to be doing that from day one. That if he had that level of bad game, then he should have been benched long ago to an extent, because then you're not making it about the injury. You're literally trying to say he's cleared, he's good, and he's doing things. And then that whole thing becomes like, then this is not a new thing now, 60 games down the line.
And we also don't necessarily know that it was due to the injury. He might have had a poor attitude. He might have XYZ. There's any number of things that could have happened.
Sure, I get that. And like, but I just don't, what I don't understand is like, it's not like it's been a secret that he's struggled this year, especially from an offensive standpoint, because he's not the same player that he was.
No.
That's right. Like
his
this year,
has dipped
right. And this year he was never going to be. And the thing is that like, it's kind of hard to listen in hindsight, like as Tortorella talks about this concept of like having to remember that and remember that he didn't get that full off season, but yet then trying to say that for accountability's sake, you've got to treat him the same way. This is, that's the hard part for Tortorella, because I don't think he has a tactful way of doing that. Like it's kind of always abrasive.
It's a sticky situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, but it kind of always is, because Tortorella is not here to necessarily make friends with everybody. He's doing his job the way he knows how to do the job.
Right.
And there's nothing that's going to change that. The second part of this, and this is where I say I leave this for everybody's interpretation, because this could be Joel Farabee, this could be something else within the organization. But if this was going to be a problem, and Tortorella, to his credit, gave Farabee credit for this, he made himself ready to go on day one.
Yeah.
Was that necessarily the right thing in hindsight? Maybe not.
Right.
Because now that you think about it, you could have eased him back in. You could have said, listen, he's still recovering from this surgery.
You could have
give him the extra
conditioning stint.
Give him the 2 weeks into the regular season, so it was November. Give him until Thanksgiving. Give him what we thought it was going to take, because we all definitely were surprised he was good to go on season opener.
Absolutely. We expected in November. Right.
But now you're seeing the after effects, which is once, and this is the truth, once you're into it, once you're into the game, then you're not building any muscle and you're not training like you would in the off season. And you're just trying to take the days and heal up as best you can in between, because you're on to the next one to push it the next time. Right. So,
well, and we've seen time and time again that if a player thinks they're ready, they're going to try to play, even if they're not 100%.
Sure.
And sometimes the team just simply needs to not allow them to make that decision.
Right. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's hard to pinpoint exactly who's responsible for this, because good luck telling Joel Farabee or any other hockey player, sit out purposely because we really think you need this timeline, if there's an option that he could clear for season opener, right?
It's times like this where I wish there was someone in the front office, whether it be the GM, whether it be the president of hockey ops. In this case, it's not Chuck Fletcher. Spoiler alert.
No,
right.
In this case, they're the same person.
Right, and it's not him. I wish there was someone in the front office who is making that call. And I'm even talking just for the franchise. That's what I want. Because
it does no favors.
Right. That same person stops Ryan Ellis from playing too soon. That same person stops Sean Couturier from attempting to play too soon. That same person stops Nolan Patrick from attempting to play too soon. Within reason. I know that situation's more complicated. But there's no spine. There's no integrity in this front office. And I know we've talked about it ad nauseum. And
we're going to get we'll get into the front office more as we get to the parts where we're getting
right. And we might as well get into the losing over the last couple of weeks.
And let me put a bow on one thing with the Farabee thing, because of the fact that, because you mentioned like the idea that is this, is he a candidate for this week kind of stuff? So I highly doubt it.
So Elliot Friedman came out and essentially said that, oh, by the way, asterisk, for the record, there's no way in a million years the Flyers would ever do it. But Joel Farabee has maybe vaguely floated the idea. That's all that was.
The problem with stuff like this is that whether, and I'm not saying whether it happens now or whatnot, that's beside the point. It's when you have a deadline in place, deadlines can breed action, but it also makes it harder to do something when you know that you want to leverage it a little bit more. So I don't see any benefit to doing this today, tomorrow, this week.
Absolutely.
If this discussion comes up again, because let's put it this way, you have to ask yourself a very fair question at this point, that right along the lines with the Ryan Ellis trade, or with another play, like let's throw in Travis Sanheim here for a second, who's not hurt by any stretch, but sat out as a healthy scratch in his closest to hometown junior team city, Calgary.
John Tortorella is making some statements with his personnel decisions.
Sure. And and Sanheim's one of these guys who another one, like, signed long term and signed for big money, probably fair money, but big money is what, as it turns out on this roster. And you're looking at a situation where push the wrong buttons in terms of the way, and I agree with Tortorella to an extent where it's like, listen, if that's going to damage a relationship, then maybe that's not the guy who needs to be here. And maybe that's a player who shouldn't be here and blah, blah. I get all that. Right. I'm not saying that that's not a wrong statement, but good luck moving it,
Right.
Good luck moving it. And it's why I was really against the Travis Sanheim extension, because I didn't understand the rush for 8 more years for a player when you shouldn't know what this team's going to look like 2 years from now, let alone, hey, by the way, this is a guy who's going to be here for 8. Yep. So, you've got that situation. So when it came to, that's what I'm saying, when it comes to trading for Ryan Ellis and then not being able to see into the future for that, or signing Sanheim for that long-term, or now Farabee's got a contract. Like, you got contracts that are terrible, flat out terrible. They're just stuck. Like,
and it will, if Sean Couturier never plays hockey again, which at this point has to be a possibility,
I think it's a little less because he's been skating again.
I understand.
So I don't think he's never going to play again.
And I'm certainly not wishing it.
But at what quality? I hear you there.
And he's one setback away. Like, if
potentially, I got
if he gets close to game shape again and then ends up not playing and has another surgery. Okay, but either way, if he ends up never playing again, well, at the end of the day, you can LTIR him every year, so it doesn't really affect your cap. But what if he's 30% of Sean Couturier? What if he looks like Erik Karlsson looked for 3 years before his miraculous return this season? What if he looks like, because Erik Karlsson couldn't skate. For 2 full years, he could not skate. And then this year it turned back on. But I mean, you can't count on that.
No, but and in fairness, like, I think that the thing with Erik Karlsson all those years ago was that playoff run in 2017 and then kind of the subsequent season after.
His ankle disintegrated.
Like, he just wore himself down next to nothing. And then this season maybe having it's one of the best seasons of his career.
There are videos of him from that playoff run, that Eastern Conference Finals run they went on, where watching him turn left versus watching him turn right was
it's painful.
Excruciating. It's uncomfortable. He looks like a child. And I say that as someone who cannot skate. And I know how shattered his ankle was just based on that.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. So,
and by the way, the Sharks might not be done. I know we talked about Timo Meier, but there's a chance that Erik Karlsson has revived his trade value.
Oh, sure. Well, and again, it's one of these cases where, I think pretty much every team that's toward the bottom at this point or close to, like I don't want to, because there's some of these teams haven't made a trade yet, and we kind of know, like, it's fair to recognize the situation with Chicago at this point, which is Jonathan Toews was going to be on the move for sure until everything came out about him with the long COVID symptoms and everything.
And now
like that.
He may never play again. Speaking of
now,
guys
you got questions about the future of his career. The
Yeah.
Patrick Kane situation with Chicago is starting to evolve into a Claude Giroux-like situation where he has a destination where he wants to play, and it seems like he's not going to be budging off of that.
Not even seems like. He has left the team. Like, he flew back to Chicago this weekend, and they were in San Jose for a game on Saturday night, and he left the team and returned home in anticipation of a trade. And it certainly seems as though the Rangers are going to get it done.
And he's going to get what he wants.
Yep, they traded Vitaly Kravtsov to the Canucks, presumably to free up a little bit of space.
That did now I saw that Braden Schneider's getting sent down, and I thought I saw there was another player who's going to go down for like a very brief period as well, just only to come back up whenever the time comes. But those couple of days or whatever it may be would buy them time to get the money right.
So when is the trade deadline?
It's Friday technically, but Friday. It's not going to feel like it by the time we get there because there's so much happening.
What I've heard is that the Patrick Kane trade may not happen until the deadline.
I heard Wednesday is a big target day here.
So I wonder I wonder if you see who the Rangers play on Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Kevin. Sunday evening, 9:06 Eastern time.
Oh boy.
Does Patrick Kane play for the New York Rangers in Philadelphia on Wednesday night?
No.
Okay.
Because I think that there is a distinct possibility that if not the hours leading up to when, actually, I'll tell you what, I'll do you one better. While I'm on the drive to the arena, the trade will go down.
Okay.
So that this way, okay, it's happened.
Make his debut in Madison Square Garden on Thursday night.
It's happened. We'll know it's happened. He won't be able to play on Wednesday, obviously, because it'll just have happened.
Do you think they get him to the building during the game? And then he buses,
not in Philly.
And then he buses home with the team. It'd be pretty cool if he shows up.
It'd be interesting, but I don't think it. I mean, they're just going to
the airport's 15 minutes from the stadium.
Yeah, I hear you, but I still think they're going to send him straight to MSG and be like, just start there,
Flight tracker, watch it.
but he shows up in the visitors owners box in the second period. They get him on TV. I'm pretty sure it's the national game on Wednesday. Tell me it's a 7:30 start. So yes,
it's a TNT game.
Yes.
Tell me that doesn't have flair and pizzazz. We love it.
Well, it's okay, but anyway,
it's very Broadway. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the Chicago resolution here at this point.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I don't think that means that Chicago's done at that point. Like, let's remember that they're
another team that's selling everything that's not nailed
right.
down.
But as I was about to say,
Sam Lafferty, Jake McCabe.
Let's remember that their offseason involved a lot of one-year deals with very movable caps that they can certainly retain half of.
Reason.
Like Max Domi stands out massively. 1-year deal, $3 million. That's easy to move.
And doesn't he sound like he's going to be an asset in the playoffs? Doesn't Max Domi sound like the kind of fourth-line center you want on your playoff team?
I'm trying to think of who would go out and try to get him at this stage of the game.
Anybody. Who would?
Well, you know what I mean. Who I'm trying to figure out, like in terms of who hasn't done something that would go and do it.
Winnipeg.
It's an interesting choice. It did kind of jump out to me.
Vegas.
I'll give you a crazy one.
Okay.
How about Seattle?
I love it.
Could you see the Kraken thinking, hey, you know what? We could use a depth guy with some edge.
I'm excited that Seattle's good. I think it is fantastic for the league.
I think it's really good also.
I really hope, man, and the West is weak. The West is so weak.
That means it's wide open, though. It's great.
Yep. And the wild card is nuts. Like, right now, if the playoffs ended today, Seattle's in the second wild card spot.
Right.
They would play Vegas. That series would be lunacy. If they beat Vegas, they would play the winner of LA and Edmonton. Right. You have a real shot at the Seattle versus Edmonton in the second round.
The thing that's fascinating about Seattle is they're the low pretty much. I mean, I'm taking away the central teams for a second here. But,
and we're not
but
doing
they have but they have the least amount of games played among the Pacific Division teams that are in the playoff picture. So it's not inconceivable here that Seattle, being the second wild card today, still just 6 points off of the division lead.
There's plenty of season left in that division.
Move all over the place. I mean, there's so much movement that could go on. I mean, you're literally talking about 8 playoff teams in the West right now that are separated by 6 points or less.
It's insane.
It's wonderful.
Lunacy. Yep. And
it's glorious.
The craziest thing is none of them have done anything.
Yeah, really. I mean, if you look at the trade deadline.
There was actually a move today. Denis Gurianov to Montreal in exchange for
Evgeny
Dadonov back to the Stars.
Yes.
That is, I think, the only move I've seen out of the West so far.
Oh, and by the way, that's a great segue because there is a bit of a Montreal selling move. Montreal is one of these teams that are coming behind. We already know that Vancouver sold off Bo Horvat, so that's one. And certainly
they're a seller anyway. Yeah.
Well, because let's just say I know one other guy from Vancouver who's going to be on the move in a matter of days is Luke Shen. He'll go somewhere.
Yep. By the way, Chicago did ship Jack Johnson back to Colorado.
That's true
today.
too. Correct.
Yep. The Blues have been hauling ass, getting stuff out of town since they decided to trade Tarasenko and O'Reilly. Barbashev will probably go.
San Jose.
Barbashev did go. I'm sorry, Barbashev went today to Vegas. I'm sorry.
Vegas, correct. And so we've already touched on San Jose because the Meyer deal's the big one, but don't rule out an Erik Karlsson type of deal.
Niederreiter did go to the Winnipeg Jets.
Yep.
So that Arizona, is a moderate move.
Yeah, Arizona, a lot of the clock ticking on the Chychrun stuff right now, obviously. But there's other guys on that roster as well who certainly could be moved in different ways. You know, one name that I know I've seen out there is there's a possibility that the former Flyer Shane Gostisbehere could be on the move.
I did see that.
They also Arizona just the other day moved Dyson Mayo as well. So that was like they're moving off a couple of like the low, like it's going to be lower key guys. I believe like Chychrun's the headliner of that group, but still, and one of the interesting parts is Anaheim might be the only team that's not a big seller outside of goaltending. That because their biggest trade chip, Anaheim's anyway, to me, their biggest trade chip, Adam Henrique, is week to week with an injury now. So he kind of comes off the board, but I totally expected Henrique to be moved before the injury.
Right.
So that's an unfortunate situation. And even Columbus at this point, because Columbus thought that they had a deal in place that would have sent Gavrikov to Boston, and Boston pivoted and went with the Washington trade. Yep. So, but Gavrikov still should be on the move at some point in the next couple of days.
Yeah, so Jarmo Kekalainen will get some assets back.
And another Columbus player to keep an eye on, by the way, Jonas Korpisalo could very well move as well. Because if you got a team looking for a last minute goaltending solution, he's had a very strong year for a bad team.
Vegas, just in case.
Oh, I could see something like that. That would be an interesting potential move. I mean, I think Korpisalo makes a decent amount of money, so you got to factor that in. Fair. But
Vegas always has a way to make it work.
Of course they do. But my point being, okay, and you already talked about St. Louis and things like that, right? And Nashville's kind of started selling some pieces. Washington sold some pieces. Is there any other team in that grouping of like the bottom from 20th in the standings on that hasn't really been selling lately?
Let me take a look here. 20th on has not been selling. Ottawa has not been selling.
Okay, but Ottawa kind of is what they are. Like it's a younger team. They have some injuries. I don't think they have much to sell per se.
Haven't seen a whole lot out of Montreal yet.
No, but I think they've made it similarly. They're another team that's built on youth more than anything.
All right. Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about the one and only team that we talk about on a regular basis, the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah.
Like every other team that's in the bottom, like the bottom third of the standings, has acknowledged where they are and started selling off. And
we know what's going to happen here.
So go ahead, tell me what's going to happen.
JVR is going to go to whoever missed out on Timo Meier and Ryan O'Reilly and every other top end forward that goes to the market.
Sure.
And Justin Braun's going to go to whoever misses out on all the better depth defensemen. And Nick Seeler is going to go to whoever misses out on Justin Braun somehow. And that's it. And you're going to get what's left over. And that's all, quite frankly, that's all this team is worth.
Okay, that's fair. And that's all
And that's all Chuck Fletcher can do.
You're not wrong about most of that. I'm going to correct a couple of things you said because I've got a couple of amendments to what I think is going to happen.
Okay.
Number one, JVR is going to definitely get traded.
Sure.
But, here's the interesting thing because I don't know what the value is going to be. I heard somebody I did a spot on 97.3 on Friday. And hold on. And somebody had written from somewhere. I don't know if it was an ESPN thing. But somebody had written somewhere that the thought is that they could get a first for him. I kind of said, I think hold on. I kind of said in my mind, the ceiling at best, and I mean at best, would be a second.
Minimum. All right, like at best, right.
But let's not kid ourselves about what he is. For a goal-scoring winger who's supposed to be like the power play guy and all that stuff, right? 9 goals in 40 games isn't going to get you a ton of value, typically. Now, there's one reason why I kind of changed my mind on that, and that is if all of the good forwards that are out there are not there by Wednesday, then he becomes kind of a commodity, and maybe there becomes a bit of a bidding war, and maybe somehow or other you do actually luck yourself into a second or maybe even a first in a crazy world because somebody gets desperate. But that's really the only reason. If you want me to give you a possible destination for this, I got a really, really big hunch that it's Minnesota.
Okay.
I have a huge hunch that it's and Minnesota's already been linked to him. That's no secret. But a lot of the other teams that were linked to him have made their decisions already. Right. Dallas was linked and made their move. Vegas, I think, was linked at one point and they made their move. I know Carolina's looking to do something. Is that, is JVR along the lines of their something? I struggle to see that because he's not what Rod Brindamore's system is all about. Is he? I also sense that.
That's fair. I also want, but if you're just looking for a net front presence on the power play, if you feel like you might be a little small on PP2,
that's not the way they run their power.
No, you're right.
Their power play is way more skill than that.
That's fair.
And I just don't see it. So,
I do wonder about Minnesota just because they have been playing banker elsewhere. They have brokered a couple other salary retention deals.
And let's not kid ourselves here. The Flyers will end up retaining half of this contract.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Easily. That's how the deal starts. Sure. Just because it doesn't make sense. Nobody has $7 million in cap space.
Sure.
By the way, we don't know where JVR will go, but I do have the full details on Timo Meier.
Oh, I know. So we'll get to that right after we finish with the
Flyers. Okay.
Because I want to keep
absolutely
this going first. Because you're right. Like you're absolutely spot on accurate when you talk about these are the three guys to focus on. If you like. Let's put to bed. We already put to bed the Joel Farabee thing, kind of, because I just don't see it happening this week.
It's not going to happen.
No, and guess what else is not going to happen? You can talk about Kevin Hayes all you want to. It's not happening this week. I would be stunned.
Unlikely.
You can talk about any member of this defensive group. It's not happening this week. I just don't see it. So, if you want to try to talk about these guys who we've all kind of heard among the rumors and among the rumblings and the thought process behind this guy could be on the move or this guy, we don't know. Like it seems like there's a clear point of contention between John Tortorella and the future of this guy in this system. I just don't see it resolving itself in another 5 days. It just seems unlikely. So,
and especially just with the contract implications, like
exactly.
He's got so much money left. It's not going to happen.
No. So I think you hit the nail on the head with the three guys to watch because it's definitely Van Riemsdyk. I think Braun. Like the one thing I will pull back on is because if all this stuff with Patrick Kane and the Rangers comes to fruition, then I don't think that Justin Braun is going back to the Rangers. Like I really actually thought was possible for a little while here.
Right.
I do think somebody will take Justin Braun down the stretch. I don't think it will be for much. I honestly can't see it being much more than a sixth. Like
that's fair.
That might be being generous, but I think
I could see a team like Tampa Bay snagging him just as literally an 8th or 9th option.
Tampa
just because they're stupid.
Tampa will possibly make a hard push there
if they don't get Luke Shen.
Yep, exactly. Because that's exactly the type of guy that they would go for on their blue line, especially since they've had him once already. But
that's the name I should have said. Whoever gets Justin Braun will be the team that missed out on Luke Shen.
Potentially, anyway. Yes, but that's
right.
And it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be minimal return there, and then. Here's kind of my amendment from what you said, because Nick Seeler's name has definitely come up, and yes, there is a market, and yes, I know as hard as it is to believe, there's a lot of teams out there very interested.
Not more than a 5th or a 6th, right?
Well, hang on a minute. There's one thing that boosts his value a little bit more than anybody else, and that's, or not boosts it, but he has a very manageable contract situation that is not expiring.
Right.
So he has one more year left, but it's very flexible. You can kind of play with this.
You could bury it if you need to.
So I think that the fact that you're not talking about getting a guy for 2 months helps your cause a little bit. Here's the thing that I'm actually almost afraid of at this point that I think really could play out. I think that there's never going to be a price that they feel good enough with, and they'll just keep him.
Fair enough.
And I don't get it because... Let's not kid ourselves here. If you think that Nick Seeler is part of the future of this franchise...
I'm stunned they signed him for 2 years. Stunned. I don't know why you're giving that kind of player more than 1 year.
You know what? I'm not going to say I don't understand the term or the contract or anything like that.
Like, it's not a bad contract. I don't get it.
You know what made sense about it? If you're going to keep him in the 7th defenseman role, then I get it. But somewhere along the way, he somehow or other cracked the top 6, basically, because he's missed 3 games the entire year. So when you consider that, quite literally, unless the player was named Ivan Provorov, every player who is on the team, or every defenseman who's on the team, has been benched at some point. Ristolainen was a healthy scratch. Travis Sanheim was a healthy scratch. Justin Braun's been in and out of the lineup, obviously. Sealer was actually sat down for 3 games in December, so he did miss a little bit of time, but for the most part, not Nick Sealer. Cam York just was a healthy scratch the other day. And granted, they said to rest him because he's played a lot or whatever, but yeah, I'm buying that. He had made a big mistake the night before, and then he doesn't play. Shocker. I think I know why he didn't play on Saturday after making a mistake that was pointed out by the coach on Friday night in the post-game presser, right?
Yep.
There's no coincidence there. Who am I missing here? Am I missing anybody else? I said Sanheim. I said York. I said Ristolainen. Tony DeAngelo has been a healthy scratch. There you go. That's the other one. Yep. Every defenseman on this roster has been sat down at some point. So why there's this fascination about how Nick Sealer suddenly became a top 6 guy, and we're not pushing the Cam York, let's develop Cam York more kind of thing and give him the minutes he deserves and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that means Cam York's not being blocked by Nick Sealer because they've been playing in the same lineup together. If nothing else, it's been Justin Braun's been the guy held out of the lineup, which is kind of funny to me because Braun's got should have trade value, and you're sitting him.
And by the way, if you were looking for the right way to be a bad team and to sell assets, earlier in the show we discussed the Arizona Coyotes getting value from Dyson Mayo, Shane Gostisbehere, and Jacob Chikrin. Those are 3 of their assets, by the way, and they're going to get far more value, even if you exclude Chikrin, because he's the big piece, and the Flyers aren't trading a monster piece right now. We talked about Sanheim, Provorov, etc. It's not happening right now. I'm willing to bet the Coyotes will get more for Mayo and Gostisbehere than the Flyers will for Braun and Sealer.
It's possible, sure.
And that's the kind of thing that I just know. And there's no real particular reason other than the fact that Chuck Fletcher is a garbage GM.
Okay, and this is a good segue into something else that I had to say this week because on the surface, I'm going to say something that I already know that if you isolated just this one sentence, it's going to make me look like an idiot, and everybody is going to be up in arms that I'm saying it. But you need to hear the reasoning behind it. So let's let the whole thing play out here, please. Give me a minute after to get into it. The
floor is yours.
Because the statement on its own is going to sound ridiculous. Chuck Fletcher is not the biggest issue with the Flyers.
Okay.
The reason being is because
Bobby Clark.
Well, the reason being is because nothing that Chuck Fletcher is doing, or the lack thereof, is really all that surprising. The bad contracts are not a surprise. That was his track record in Minnesota.
Yep.
The drafting and the long develop and whatever. Okay. The Minnesota Wild are 5 years removed from Chuck Fletcher being their general manager.
Yep.
How they doing?
Well, they're in cap hell and fighting for a playoff spot.
Sounds lovely, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, and listen, fighting for a playoff spot is a little extreme, in terms of.
Yeah, it's fair.
Well, no, but only because we already mentioned the Western Conference playoff picture.
Pretty wide open.
6 points separates everybody, but then there is a 4-point gap from the last playoff team to the first team out, and then from there another 4-point gap. So it's really a 9-team race for 8 spots.
Yeah, so they're pretty in a playoff spot.
But the difference for Minnesota goes from, let's put it this way, Minnesota played a game on Sunday afternoon. Minnesota came back and won the game in overtime. So they got their 2 points, right?
Yep.
So they magically jumped from 70 to 72. So they went from being one of the wild cards to into second place in the Central Division by that stroke of luck. But that quickly you could go back to being a wild card. In other words, they're hovering in wild card territory.
Yep.
And how many times since, here's a question for you. How many times since Chuck Fletcher's tenure as GM of Minnesota started, how many times have Minnesota Wild won a playoff series? So I'm literally asking for total playoff series wins since whenever he started.
Zero.
No, it's not 0.
1, 2.
It's 2.
2, okay.
Like, there are 2 seasons they made it out of the first round, and that is it.
Yep.
So if you like being stuck in the middle, then you kind of know the situation, right? So there's nothing surprising about what Chuck Fletcher does or the lack thereof.
He's a perfect Flyers GM. Like, we should have known during, like, when they fired Ron Hextall, we should have known Chuck was perfect.
Well, and here's the thing with this, too. Not only is there nothing surprising about it, but there's really nothing, like, it's not surprising, and there's nothing that's going to necessarily, like there's no way to change it, but it's like, this is who he is, and
I cannot wait until Danny Briere runs this team. I can't wait. I hope that he's allowed to actually make decisions, but I cannot wait until Danny Briere is in charge of this team.
But it's just one of those things where it's like, there's nothing surprising about anything that Chuck Fletcher's doing as general manager, and here's the thing, like, you're just watching repeat. This is the 5th.
I've seen Paul Holmgren. I've seen Paul Holmgren be a general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers.
Right.
I'm watching it today. Not even literally. I just mean as a general manager. Like, we're just stuck in the middle. And I know we've talked about that a lot on this show, but it's
I think Paul Holmgren. I mean, honestly, Paul Holmgren did a better job than this.
That's fair.
Like, truthfully, I mean, Paul Holmgren actually had a year where he had to take everything and kind of build it back up in a year, and found a way to do it, and kept them in that. Look, they didn't win a lot, but they had more successful years with him as general manager than people want to give credit for.
Paul Holmgren made the Luke Shen for JVR trade, right?
Yes, he did.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was remembering history correctly.
But there's examples. There's examples for all of that.
For sure. For anybody. There's good and bad. I know every GM.
Don't worry about it. I'm gonna don't worry about it. I'm gonna bring up Paul Holmgren in a second. Don't you worry, because there's another kind of tactic to this whole thing. But
okay.
But the point being, okay, so this is Chuck Fletcher's 5th trade deadline since taking over as general manager. Okay, 5th.
It should certainly be his last.
I mean, it should have been his last a year ago.
The second or third, right?
Year before that, potentially. Like,
yeah. Yep.
Like, that's the thing that makes him not the biggest issue, because when your seat is hot again, cold again kind of situation, you're always trying to do the job to keep your job.
But
right?
Has it ever been hot, or did fans just get mad? Like, I'm curious if Chuck Fletcher has ever been actually genuinely concerned about his job, or if fans just got upset.
I mean, I think that there's elements of it where it definitely has heated up. I don't know if we've ever reached a point where it's scalding hot. Okay. I'll say that much. I do think it's heated at times, because you can't deny, and this is what I remember talking about this on the last show that we did now almost 3 weeks ago.
Nearly a month ago, yeah.
But this is it still holds true. When you're in this position in this particular sport, and maybe in any major sport for that matter, because I think it's a skill that's necessary if you're going to be a general manager. You can't be, well, and as an organization as well, this kind of goes into this. You can't be reactive. I mean, right. There are situations as a general manager where you do have to be reactive, in the sense that unexpected injury hits you. Well, you got to react to that and maybe do something that fixes that problem immediately, because you just lost a player. But organizations can't be reactive to, well, we're just, his seat will naturally heat up when we go on the next 10-game losing streak. You know what I mean? That's not how you operate. You got to be proactive to, the trend says we're just going to do this again because the team's not good enough. So you jump ahead of the curve and you get there before it reaches that point. And they don't do that. So that's why the bigger issue is not Chuck Fletcher, because Chuck Fletcher just does the job the way that we've seen him do the job for 5 years. And there's no reason to think it's going to go any differently than it has. But if you're the one who runs the organization, if you sit at the top or you're in the management group and you see how it's going and you've watched this on repeat like it's an old rerun of some 90s sitcom that's on television, then at some point you need to crack down and be like, this is where the line gets drawn.
At a certain point, continue to not do that. At a certain point, it's not even about being reactive. It's not that they're being reactive. I think they're being stubborn.
Oh, they definitely are, because that's the whole story. That's the whole story about the network, right?
Like, think
Remember
about
that story.
Yeah, think about the Chuck Fletcher conversation we talked about earlier. We're only 5 points out of a playoff spot. When the entire fan base knows and have known for, at this
You're
point,
not fooling anybody.
At this point, 6 months, and for a lot of people, about 18 of them, that it's time to break it down. It's time to, maybe not all the way down. I know we've talked about strip it down all the way, rebuilds before. But it's time to make some significant, severe changes, one of which being who the general manager is.
Right.
And at a certain point, someone in the front office, and I don't know if it is Dave Scott, I don't know if it is Bobby Clark and Paul Holmgren, I don't know who actually has the call on it, but somebody at this point is willfully saying, no, he is our guy, period. Whether he should be or not, whether the facts say he should be, whether this, that, the other. You're not reacting to anything. You're just being stubborn, and you have made your decision, and your feet are in concrete.
Because the story of the networks, like this network of guys who keep kind of recycling over each other, kind of thing.
35 guys for 32 jobs.
Stems down to. It's very much like the player operation of this, where it's when this stuff happens. Do you think that? And I'll just use it as an example because it's kind of at the forefront of the conversation right now around the league.
Sure.
Do you think the San Jose Sharks don't think that Timo Meier's a nice guy?
Sure.
I'm sure they like him. I'm sure they've loved having him for the years that they did. But when you move on from somebody, it's not about a nice guy. It's about this is how business works.
Yep.
I don't want to hear, like I said, I got nothing against Chuck Fletcher as a person. I don't.
No, me neither.
He can be the nicest guy in the world, and I don't care. Like, I'm not worried. Like, good family guy, all that's like, sure, all well and good. But this is a business, and you're like, look, I understand that maybe your business is in the positive figures here, but you're not running your business very well if you look at the way that everybody else operates, and you are getting lapped.
What was the final straw in getting Ron Hextall fired? Allegedly.
Well, I guess if you want to go off of the real story that was out there, it was that he was a tyrant who stood his ground on A, the coach, and B, all this stuff with the locker room, and also the alumni story.
The presence of the alumni in the locker room was allegedly a major factor. And the alumni don't practice in the morning. The alumni don't win hockey games. The alumni... I get wanting to create a friendly culture where, the guys are hanging out, we're all shooting the breeze and talking hockey stories from the 70s and blah. I get all that. The Oilers can do it because they won 5 cups. And quite frankly, it was to their detriment for quite a long time as well, just having 1,000 ex-Oilers in the front office. You have a problem in Philadelphia where...
The big
we
problem
have too many friends in the front office. We're not here for business.
But you don't have to look. It's a league-wide thing that the network exists. And
hockey is a nepotism game, 100%.
It definitely is. But there's an element where you can tell who's evolved and who's not, kind of, or who at least has a better sense of evolution with the game, right? Like,
spoiler alert, if you're not paying attention, the guys who were nicknamed the Broad Street Bullies and still call themselves that in 2023. Their message isn't translating particularly well to the modern day player, just for the record.
But and I'm going. You know what direction I'm going in this with. I'm trying to give the good examples, right? Mm-hmm. You think Joe Sakic doesn't understand how the game's played today and knows how to put together a team that can win? Obviously, he just won as a general manager, and then stepped aside and said, "Here, let the next guy come in, so we don't lose him," and stayed on as president of hockey ops, right?
Right. And I'm willing to bet Steve Yzerman's going to do something very similar in Detroit.
Steve Yzerman was one of my next examples because you know what? It shows that you can bring back the guy to Detroit who won you all those Stanley Cups back in the day and understand that he's going to work to build something as well and take the steps necessary to get – I genuinely think that that's a team that has a shot of being – and I don't think they're going to win anything in particular this year because they're very young and they're very green to the playoffs and things like that. But getting them back in the playoffs would be significant.
And they are actively significant. And they are actively not selling and maybe looking to add. Apparently, they checked in on Timo Meier. They are rewarding their guys. Mm-hmm. The Yzer plan is in full effect.
Sure. And now here's a thought. How about a team that's not going to make the playoffs this year, that's kind of not very good, but again, recognizes the situation and to an extent, and I don't think there's been really as much turmoil with this situation, but this was also news today that I had shared or like that kind of passed around in our group and stuff like that.
This one's interesting.
David Poyle is retiring.
The only general manager the
Predators
have
ever had is retiring. Hey. Almost acknowledging it's been 26 years and acknowledging it's my time to step aside. And the guy who's right behind, who by the way happened to be the first ever head coach that they ever had in the franchise,
and was there for like 15 years, is now going to be a general manager and have Poyle in his back pocket at any time, for sure. But you want to know what? Tell me how that's any different than Vegas with George McPhee running the show at the beginning and then stepping aside and going, okay, it's Kelly McCrimmon's job now. Sure, and we saw Lou Lamoriello. Right, we saw Lou Lamoriello hand over the reins to Kyle Dubas. Like, we've seen this before. We're theoretically watching Chuck Fletcher and Danny Briere do that.
Theoretically. We've watched former players who seem to understand today's game. Like, let's bring Seattle back into the mix because is Ron Francis doing a good job there? I'd say so.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get guys know what they're doing.
Oh yeah.
And know how to step into the right position and do the right things and all of that type of stuff and figure it out the right way.
Right. The problem isn't that the Flyers have old guys around. It's that they have the wrong old guys, clearly. And it's
not just that they have old guys. It's, you know what? One of the big problems is?
The same old guys.
Well, it definitely is because you want to know what the presence is? As of next season, realistically, if I'm adding it up or doing the math correctly, and I know that this wasn't completely the case, so please don't come and attack me for I'm not stating false information. I'm just going back to a year that puts an anniversary on it, okay?
Sure.
But you're coming up on, over the last 30 years, 3 out of the 4 general managers that the team has had over very long spans of time over the course of nearly 30 years are still in that box.
Yep.
Because the transition was, I believe that that Bobby Clark was 94 to 06, then Holmgren was 06 to 14, then you had the Hextall years, and Hextall's obviously off doing a new thing, which is going swimmingly in Pittsburgh, by the way, in case anybody didn't catch.
The part that frustrates me is just really where this franchise is going.
No, did you catch that?
I did miss some of that.
Oh no! I mean, the Pittsburgh story this week.
Which one?
That Hextall was hit with fire Hextall chants from the Pittsburgh crowd earlier this week.
I did get that. Yeah.
So
here's my thing with.
But then Fletcher is obviously the rest of the tenure, and now again it's a 5. So you got a 5-year guy. What did I say? Holmgren was 8 years of Holmgren, and then 12 years of Clark.
Right.
But this is what I'm saying. That means out of 30 seasons, roughly, 25 of the last 30 seasons, you've got the general manager from those teams that are still just around as a presence. Stop with this.
And here's the thing. I distinctly remember in 2014 at the end of the Holmgren era, it seemed pretty clear to me at least, and maybe I'm misremembering this. It seemed pretty clear to me that Paul Holmgren was not getting promoted because of his excellence and et cetera, et cetera. He was getting promoted upstairs as a thank you, but also to get him out of the front office on the everyday basis.
Right.
President of Hockey Ops felt like a get your hands off my hockey team promotion. Then why are they still there? Why do you ask him for advice? If you promoted him to stop him from making decisions, why is he still making decisions?
Well, first of all, at the time that happened, a certain figure in this franchise was still alive. So
that is fair.
So there was an element of he can still make some of those decisions, and they still were moving the right way. You got to understand that at that given point in time, there was a key part to this was that when Hextall took over, I think the thought process was that was really when the rebuild, if you will, was going to start, and it was going to be a process. And then somewhere along the way, they made the playoffs with a coach that nobody had ever heard of before.
Yep.
And then in his first season in the NHL, no less. And that kind of almost derailed the plans because all of a sudden it was,
Wait a minute, are we good?
Maybe it is possible that we can be okay and make the playoffs on occasion
and rebuild
while
on the
building
fly.
it.
Right.
And sometimes that's your biggest detriment, is thinking that you can kind of squeeze by and do that. Very few teams can pull that off without going through a lot of, as John Tortorella puts it, without going through a lot of pain.
That's fair.
And I, there's not many teams in the playoffs right now, or in the playoff picture, I should say, that either don't have I want to be careful about using generational as kind of a word, but that don't have maybe a Hall of Fame level player on their roster at the moment.
Okay.
Like even Boston. Boston's got at least 2 Hall of Famers active on that roster.
Bergeron's a lock.
Marchand's got a chance.
Marchand, I think you're underestimating. I'm
not trying to underestimate.
I would put Marchand at 80+%.
Oh, I think that's a fair percentage. No, I think it's not. That's what I mean. I'm saying, like, he's definitely got a chance.
Well, and then you have Pastrnak, who is young but on Hall of Fame pace. You have Charlie McAvoy, who is young but on Hall of Fame pace.
Potentially, McAvoy. I'm not as convinced with as
if he stays healthy, I believe he is on pace to be a Hall of Famer. Right.
And that's truthfully my biggest struggle. Is
that's fair, but that's the case with anybody.
No, I know. I'm not blaming him for it.
You could have said that about McDavid after his first year.
That's true.
The old Brandon Manning knockout.
Well, it was, and here's the thing. Because I do want to put a caveat on Hall, because this is where you're right about the Marchand thing for sure, when it comes to the Hall of Fame chances. Because based on some of the criteria of guys that have been put in recently, I mean, there's some pretty obvious snubs out there too that we've acknowledged on multiple occasions. Alex McGillney and Rod Brind'Amour, please.
Rod, hello.
For sure. Brian Propp as well, possibly. I think Brian Propp's got credentials as well. But I was just thinking, because this game was on earlier on Sunday, and I was thinking it as I was watching it because he scored a goal. You know who's got a Hall of Fame case? Based on the credentials of today, it seems like. I think you already know what I'm going to say, so I'm going to let you
I'm going to see if we have the same name in mind. So, okay, I
gave you a hint, by the way, because I said he scored today, so that helps a little, doesn't it?
I didn't actually look and see who scored today.
Okay, good. Then that takes it away, so that's good.
I'm going to have 2 names for you here. One guy who I think is virtually a lock, and then I think another guy who, if they win the Cup this year, gets himself in the conversation.
Does that mean that your second guess is a guy who hasn't won a Cup before? That he needs a Cup?
Maybe.
Okay.
The first name, the guy who I think is pretty close to a lock, is David Krejci.
Okay, that's a good name, but I did not think that's not who I was talking about.
Fair enough, and we'll talk about who you meant in a minute.
But that's a very good, that's an interesting name.
The second name, if they win a Cup this year,
okay,
I think Taylor Hall puts himself in the conversation.
That's interesting. Okay, now here's the thing.
He's got a Hart Trophy.
It wasn't
a Cup.
Here's the thing, because you named 2 Boston Bruins. I wasn't talking about a Boston Bruin.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was generalizing it to the whole league, that if we're talking that level credentials here.
Okay.
Right, that because is it really 500? Like 500 is definitely a lock. But 400's almost becoming more of a lock now, because we're really letting in, they're letting in guys who don't necessarily get there kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a guy who's a lock that I think people are going to think it's nuts, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities at this point.
Go for it.
Jeff Carter.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff Carter's got over 400 goals, 800 points, and still playing at age 38, and he's won 2 cups. Exactly. Yep. You tell me how that guy tell me how that guy
Jeff Carter's a Hall of Famer.
Tell me how he's not any different than, say, I don't want to say, because the Sedins got to 1,000 points. I got to give them that.
Right.
But how is that any different from some of these other guys that we've seen go in lately, where you kind of go, okay, maybe we're starting to stretch it a little more.
How fame is fame.
But that's what I'm saying. The more you stretch it, the more he becomes a legit candidate.
Absolutely.
So I think that case is very strong at this point, because it's not like he's going to stop playing right now. He can still play at the right level. So
that is fair. So, all right. One more story before we get out of here. Quick update on the upcoming schedule. The Flyers only have 1 game this week between now and next Sunday morning, which is probably when we'll record our next show.
Yeah, probably.
Though they do play Detroit on Sunday evening. We'll have the show out at some point Sunday, probably before that game. Okay.
It'll be out before the game.
So really, it'll just be that Rangers game. We'll talk about if Patrick Kane came in.
Did you realize that game's a road game?
Which game? The
Ranger game.
I thought, is that game not in Philadelphia?
No, it is, but it's going
to
be
right. Oh yeah, it absolutely will. And
I'm just prepping people. Get ready for a.
There will be Patrick Kane chance, especially if, like you said, that trade breaks at 4:30, 5 o'clock, or 5:30 o'clock. 5:30.
It's just going to be interesting to see how this plays out, especially like the deadline as it comes up.
The Rangers fans,
so much.
Yep.
That's already happened.
But we still have Patrick Kane. We still have Jacob Chikrin. Jonathan Klingberg hasn't moved yet.
Yeah, John Klingberg's a good name to look at. That might be Anaheim's big piece to move.
That is absolutely Anaheim's big piece to move.
Although don't hold out on those goalies.
That's fair.
I've heard rumors about the Anaheim goalies.
You think John Gibson would go?
I don't know about Gibson, but
Stolarz
could be on the move. It's both of them have been talked about like kind of vaguely and
willing to bet that Anaheim gets more than the Flyers ever got. Erik Karlsson could potentially move. Gavrikov looks like he's still going to go. Vancouver could always do something wild.
Yeah. A bunch of stuff. I mean,
I could see Vancouver still doing something wild. I could see that moving like a Besser.
Like I said, it's obvious that James Van Riemsdyk, as Friday gets closer, is going to have more of a market because the rest of the markets are
everything else is drying up.
Right. It's drying up. So when you're looking for a guy who can go on the move, it's going to turn into one of your best options come later in the week. At this point, the Flyers might as well just stick with like what they're doing and hold on as long as you can. Because eventually he's going to be the last guy standing and someone may finally cave.
Yep.
And give you a little bit more than what you thought. But
yeah, but like you said, if it's a second and a fourth for JVR, I'm pretty happy with that.
But one thing because you mentioned like you mentioned before we get out of here, kind of like with the Ranger game being the only game this week and things like that, the last little stretch of games, kind of to go exactly, has been very ugly. And
touchdown.
Yeah, don't you like how the New Jersey Devils are hitting you with touchdowns 2 weeks after the Super Bowl?
Yep. Just rub it in, why don't you? Because we haven't done a show since our pre-Super Bowl prediction show, so we've been in mourning over here. So to
how do you think I felt? I watched that, and then later in the week got COVID, so I got double punched.
All right, let's end on a happy story.
Right, but you're talking, but like that's what I'm saying. You're talking 6-2, 6-2, 4-2. That was 4-2 where you were leading the game, and then McDavid turned on the
Connor McDavid turned into Connor.
Oh,
McDavid.
hang on a minute. Now I do want to pull back as much as it was against the Flyers.
Are you going to talk about the Columbus game?
No. I'm sitting here talking. I'm just talking about. Wasn't it fun to watch? Isn't it fun to watch McDavid? By the way, McDavid.
Did you see what he did in the second period against Columbus yesterday?
I didn't see a lot of what happened, but I know he had some moments.
Columbus scored in the first period. Then they scored a minute 33 into the second, 3:24 into the second, 5:56 into the second. They're up 4-0, 6 minutes into the second period.
I did see that they were up 4-0, and then they still actually Columbus still ended up winning the game. By the way,
right? But just in the second period, Fogle scored unassisted about a minute after Columbus's goal, and then Draisaitl from McDavid and Barry, McDavid from Kulak,
shorthanded.
Yeah, and then McDavid from Kulak and Barry again. Like he just decided, he's like, I'm going to get 3 points this period, and we're going to tie this game. It's insane. By the way,
you said 3 points that period.
Yeah.
And then in the third, late as they're trying to put another comeback in, he had another one. So he had
65th of the season, assist of the season, by the way.
Yeah, as I say, thank you. Please make sure you're correct there. It's not 65th goal or not 65th point.
No, 65 assists, games. 48 goals. Stupid.
I love it though. I love every second.
Me too.
Although I did think it was one of the things that was very interesting and John Tortorella said this after the game against the Devils, which I think is very not only telling, but I think truthful. Because he talked about the Devils might be a better offensive team than the Oilers.
Overall, for sure.
And that's the key. Because everybody's going the Oilers are first in goals and whatnot. Yes, they're first in goals, but Connor McDavid has 48. And Leon Draisaitl is not terribly far behind.
No, it's stupid. Speaking of goals,
yes,
we have a leader in a goal stat that's not Connor McDavid. The 2022-2023 leader for goalie goals is currently Linus Ullmark, baby. Saturday night, to seal a 3-1 victory. Kevin, we love to see a goalie goal. Come on now.
It never gets old.
Never gets old.
It never gets old. It was okay. Now, so full disclosure, and I kind of like, and I shouldn't say I didn't really say this on the top, but obviously when I was down with COVID for a little bit, a lot of stuff got put on hold. My wife's 30th birthday was going to be the weekend that I actually had COVID, so we pushed back.
Shout out Mrs. Durso.
So we pushed back all the fun.
Birthday.
We pushed back all the fun stuff to the following weekends, which was this past weekend. So I did not go. So I did not go to the Montreal game on Friday night, so we could do a nice dinner. I did not go, or not go. Did not watch the. I did not watch the 7-0 debacle that was on.
I watched
Saturday.
some of it, and it was just painful.
I'm sure it was. Well, in fairness, if you're looking for players who know how to put on a show, Jack Hughes, I know, had some pretty good moments.
Yeah.
And I heard Nico Hischier had a really nice, like, no-look backhand pass.
Yeah.
Both of them did. Hughes and Hischier are just, you know.
Oh, we're trying to end on a happy note. Come on now. Why are we talking about 7-0 game?
I'm getting there because this is it's where the Ullmark goal comes in. And now, in fairness, because my dad and I kind of split a fantasy team, and we, you know, play alongside. Linus Ullmark is one of our goalies, by the way. So I'm keeping an eye on the Bruins score for the win. I just want the win. I see 2-1 the whole way through the third period. I'm like, I go back and check.
Right.
No, and you're sweating it because I really wanted the extra bonus points for winning.
Absolutely.
And
in my league, it's 3 points.
And I go back and it's 3.5 in mine.
So nice.
So I go back and I look and I see the 3-1 final and I go, oh, good. Okay, they finished off the game. Not really thinking anything of it because I knew it was down to the last handful of minutes. So I assume it's an empty netter. But I'm sitting here like as you would, thinking Pasternak, maybe a defenseman clears it down, maybe something crazy like that. You know, who knows? And I'm scrolling through the list just to check, and I get to that empty net goal, and in a room, understand that we have friends over, and two of the friends that are sitting in the room are big enough hockey fans that this resonates, right? Or multiple, I should. There's more than that. There's actually a few more than that, and I just go, "Oh my God!" Ullmark scored a goal. And now, in fairness, and I love this, right away, one of my buddies turns around and goes, legitimately? Or was it one of these?
Was it a deflection, last play?
He's the last to touch it kind of things. And I went over to Twitter, saw the clip, and I went, he shot it. It's good. Like, legit goal.
I have a pretty similar story. I was checking my fantasy team too. I saw, the Bruins game was over. I opened the NHL app. I clicked the game to kind of pop down the scores. I scrolled 1-0, 1-1, 2-1. I scrolled over. I saw L. Ullmark.
Yep.
1. And I went, that's weird. Then I glanced down. I saw the EN denoting that it's an empty net goal. And I went, oh my God.
Yes.
And my wife was sitting next to me, Boston Bruin fan. And I went, watch this. Hit the button, turn the screen sideways, and we just watched it. And if you haven't seen the clip, you have to go check it out. Say what we want about Jack Edwards. And listen, we have criticized Jack Edwards. Don't get me wrong. That particular moment right there, that's why we love regional broadcasts. That's why we love Homer announcers. Because just pie, Ullmark scores! It's just joy. Joy.
Ullmark didn't have an answer for who came up with the idea, but having him do the Selly line was a great call.
Well, here's the thing. If a defenseman clears it 200 feet down the ice and into the empty net, they skate the handshake line. They skate the fist bump line.
Oh, yeah.
Why shouldn't the goalie?
Well, and here's the thing, and I got to imagine that Ullmark's brain was racing after the game's over because there's a lot of thoughts to process when you've just scored a goal and you're a goalie, right?
Absolutely.
If I had to guess whose idea it was to lead the Selly line,
David Pasternak.
No, Patrice Bergeron was on the ice.
That's fair.
And I think that the captain of the team that is as good of a leader as anybody in the game right now
and
knows to tap that guy on the back and go, you go and get in that line, dude.
If you look at the Selly, everyone comes in and they start hugging him. When Patrice Bergeron comes in, he is vibrating. He is jumping up and down.
There's a lot of...
You're right. That was absolutely a move by the captain.
Well,
absolutely.
This particular season... There's a lot of little kid in Bergeron in terms of they are vibing heavy.
Big Last Dance vibes.
Oh, yeah.
Big. I hope, man, The postseason episode of Behind the B is going to be incredible. Holy smokes.
And I got to tell you, there were so many things that I love about the whole sequence of clips. Once the game was over, by the way, the Allmark Swayman hug, which is always a great watch anyway, this might have been the best one I've ever seen because they just the two of them love each other. Like
that's a tandem right there.
It is a tandem. But here's one of the things that I loved, and this was post game media availability. Jim Montgomery with a quote that I think needs to resonate around the league.
Okay.
Because I know that typically like the one thing that you think of when you think of this empty net goal, it's a 2-1 game. If you screw it up, but if you screw it up in a lot of ways, because a goalie is not always perfect with this. So if you try to shoot and misfire in any way, you could turn it over, lead to an easy tying goal. There's a lot that can go wrong on that particular play.
Yeah. If you're up 2 goals, you feel a lot more comfortable. But 1 goal, it's tight.
Usually goalies don't try it unless they're up by 2.
Yeah.
So to hear Jim Montgomery say, I love it. Our answer is we're just trying to close out the game. And the
vibes are high in Boston.
And to go, we can win, we win faceoffs pretty well. What a flex answer from Jim Montgomery to say, you know what, if you would ice the puck, we win faceoffs pretty well.
You said it yourself. Patrice Bergeron's on the ice. Hello?
Well, right, but that's why I'm saying, like to sit there and go, we're good at faceoffs. We can win a faceoff in our own zone if we have to. Go for it. I love that he went for it. He tried earlier.
That's how you trust your team.
Absolutely. I was talking about this with friends last night about this too. Because look, it's way too early for me to just hit you with cup final predictions and things like that.
Fair.
But there is an element right now where there's like a good, strong sense that we could be looking at a Boston-Carolina East final.
That'll be so much fun.
I think that is is there any more of a dream coaching matchup than this? Jim Montgomery and Rod Brind'Amour? 2 coaches that I think anybody would go nuts to play for.
Yeah. See, the thing is, there's no way we can possibly guess an Eastern Conference final with any sort of clarity because the East is just murderer's row right now.
It really is a juggernaut right now.
Everybody's adding. Let's read it from the top down. Boston has made their move. They added Orlov and Hathaway, and might not be done. You never know.
And Boston doesn't need to go crazy big here. I did think for a little while that they might have been, caveat them because it's not going to happen because I don't think he wants it. But I thought Boston would be an interesting place for Kane. Oh my
God! Stop. Pasternak, Bergeron, Kane.
We said it on a recent episode. We said it because I turned around and said I wouldn't even do that. It was Pasternak was with Marchand and Bergeron,
right?
But that meant that you were going to put Taylor Hall and probably
David Krejci.
Or David Krejci. It was right. It was Taylor Hall, Krejci, and
Patrick Kane is your second line.
And Jake DeBrusk drops to your third with Charlie Coyle and
Nola Chari now, or not Nola. Yeah.
No, I thought you were going to say Nick Foligno, maybe.
Nick Foligno. Oh, yeah. Probably Nick Foligno.
It could be Nick Foligno. It could be Trent Frederick. I mean, you could take your pick. But okay, Toronto got Ryan O'Reilly.
The New Jersey is getting Timo Meier.
Yeah, by the way, before we get out of here, are we going to read that terms off really quick?
So that is official. I do have that here. I got
the Sharks tweet in front of me, so that's what I'm looking at.
I have the Devils press release and NHL.com article. The Devils acquired forward. It's a lot. Buckle your seats.
Oh yeah, there's a ton in this.
And I'm going to try to pronounce names. If I butcher them, I'm sorry. The Devils acquired. So this is San Jose to the Devils.
Yep.
Timo Meier, Timur Ibrahimov, Scott Harrington, Santeri Hataka, Zachary Emond, a 5th-round pick, originally Colorado's pick, in the 2024 draft. Seattle,
pretty big package for New Jersey for being the team that gets the marquee player, right?
San Jose receives, so New Jersey to San Jose was New Jersey's 1st-round pick in 2023, conditional. Shakir Makhamadulin, Nikita Akodiak, I think I'm pronouncing that wrong. Forward Andreas Janssen, Fabian Zetterlund, a conditional 2nd in 2024 and a 7th in 2024. San Jose does also retain 50% of Meier's salary, not a surprise.
Was there a typo in there potentially? Because I have something on here about a conditional 2024 first.
I said that 2023 first,
a conditional
2024 second. I wonder if it's a second. Hold on.
To a first. Is that what it would be?
Yeah. So, okay, if Okay, there's New Jersey's pick this year is top 2 protected, but that's not going to happen because they're going to make the playoffs. San Jose receives conditional 2024 second round pick. Should New Jersey reach the Eastern Conference Final and Meyer plays in at least 50% of the Devils' playoff games in 2023, or the 2024 Eastern Conference or the 2024 Eastern Conference Finals, that pick turns into the first.
Interesting. Oh, that's
and it will be top 10 protected if it's a first. So there's a lot of conditions on this. It's a complicated pick. If New Jersey's 2024 first round pick in the if New Jersey's first round pick in 2024 is a top 10 selection, they'll have the option to instead transfer the 2025 pick.
So by the way, because I know people are fascinated with stuff like this, Timo Meier said he's wearing number 96 with the Devils because apparently it was his number in juniors.
Okay.
And an interesting comment from Sharks GM Mike Greer on Erik Karlsson. The quote is, "At this time, I'm anticipating he's here for the rest of the season, but also said if someone wants him, where there's a will, there's a way." Okay. So
interesting.
Don't close the door, but the anticipation is he might not be moving. So there you go.
One more thing on the Devils real quick. It's interesting that it is not a condition based on re-signing. It's a condition based on how the team does.
Right.
Like if they reach the conference finals this year or the conference finals next year. So it's a 2-year condition on the Devils being good, which, I mean, if you're San Jose, seems like a pretty good bet to me.
Sure. This is a really good this is a really good quote too. Tom Fitzgerald for New Jersey said he told Timo Meier the travel in New Jersey may add 5 years to your career because he's fair.
But it might take away 20 years off his life though.
Well, no, but it's everything is relatively close enough that it's like, hey, listen, you bounce around, you play the New York teams, you play Philly, you play Washington.
But is the traffic worth it?
Yeah, I hear you there, but
all right,
I think he'll adjust.
All right, we're getting out of here. We will be back next week with our post-trade deadline wrap show. We'll tell you where Patrick Kane went. We'll tell you if Jacob Trickman went. We'll tell you about everything else. We will tell you about that Flyers game against the Rangers on Wednesday night.
We'll tell you about anything else that happens by Friday.
Absolutely. And make sure to follow along with Kevin as we get closer to the trade deadline at Kevin_Durso. Follow the podcast at YWT Podcast. You can find the show on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SportsTalkPhilly.com. Anywhere you find your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit the like button over there. It really helps us out. And Kevin, anything else?
Nope.
All right. Well, until then.
We'll see how Friday plays out in the rest of the week because there's a lot seems to be happening. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, post-trade deadline. We'll see you.